afternoon and welcome to the Facebook Advertising Masterclass put on by Vivial. Today, Abby and myself are going to be talking through how to increase landing page conversions and get more customers on social. So this was a topic that resoundingly our audience has told us that they wanted to hear. And so when I heard that social was the topic, I thought of nobody else I'd rather have than Abby Williams. Abby is our agency social media manager. She's been with Vivial for over 4 years. And when I think of somebody that really understands social from top to bottom, Abby is it. She brings a wealth of knowledge, and I'm thrilled to have her with me today. Welcome, Abby.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. For those of you that don't know, my name is Laura Cole, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Vivial. So let's jump in. We have a lot to talk through. As with our last masterclass, which is on GMB, we're taking the content up a notch, right? We're going a little bit deeper to make sure that you have all the tips and tricks that you need to know. So today, what are we going to cover? First, why Facebook ads, setting a strong foundation. Abby's going to take us through landing pages and what these are. And then we're really going to take you through what you need to know to set up a campaign. Everything from picking the right objective, setting the budget and how to set the budget, selecting conversion events, building an audience and using ad copy and the right media sources to target that audience. And finally, most importantly, how do you monitor and track this to make sure that it is really going to make a difference for your business? As always, as we go, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Last time we got just a ton of questions. We're hoping we get the same so that we can have a really interactive experience today. But with that, let's jump in. Okay, so I think first, it's pretty obvious, but let's talk about why Facebook ads. You wouldn't be sitting in our audience today if you didn't realize the importance and understand that it's definitely a needed facet in marketing your business. The reality is that there's over 230 million active users. So if you're not marketing your business on Facebook, you are missing out, and you're missing an audience that is that's ready to buy. There is very advanced targeting, and Abby and I are going to walk through some of those examples of how you can target that right audience. But you can really narrow in and hone in to reach the right audience at the right time with a very specific message, which is a very powerful tool when it comes to marketing your business. Retargeting opportunities. We're going to talk about a word called a pixel. The Facebook pixel allows you to create custom audiences and allows you to really retarget those audiences that have visited your website, right? So it's a very targeted, very appropriate way to reach your audience base. Facebook is affordable, right? We're going to talk through budgets and we're going to give some examples. It doesn't have to take a lot to get started, although you certainly can spend a lot if you have the budget that allows for it. So it can be a very affordable way to advertise your business. And finally, and I think maybe most importantly, is really robust data insights. As with any marketing that you do, you want to have the data to understand what's working, what's not working, and how do you mix it up to make sure that you're spending every dollar appropriately for your business. Okay, so let's talk through setting the foundation. Little too simplistic maybe to say who, what, where, when, how, but as we think of explaining things, it works here just the same as it does with anything else. So, and we're going to actually walk you through and give you examples of all of this. First, you need to think about, who do you want to attract? You likely know the audience that buys your products, buys your services, that is in need for what it is that your business offers. So think about who is it that you want to attract? Who are your most profitable customers? And what does that audience look like? When you decide that, you need to decide what action do you want them to take, right? Is this about utilizing a coupon? Is this about visiting your store? Is this about making a purchase online? It can be any of those things, and you really want to think about what is it that you want them to do with your business. Where do you want them to go? We're going to talk about this in a little bit, but you want to make sure that when you're directing a prospect or even an existing client somewhere, that it's a very good user experience, and we're going to give you examples of how to best do this. When do you want them to take action, right? Do you have certain days of the week that you're trying to build up maybe your calendar for a service tech or something of that? You can absolutely plan your advertising around when you're looking for customers to do business with you. And finally, how much are you willing to spend? We've talked about budget a couple times. We're going to talk about it further, but you really do need to think about what is the dollar amount that you'd like to focus on your social media advertising. Okay, so I've done enough talking. Abby, let's talk to the audience about landing pages.
Okay, so we're actually going to start at the end where we're sending our audience. So what can you do to increase the likeliness of a conversion? There's a couple of things. You want to add value to their experience. Here's where you have an opportunity to point out features and benefits of your service or your product. You can maybe point out a pain point and how your service can alleviate that. Just adding in little snippets of information. You don't want to overwhelm them, but this is a really good opportunity to educate. You also want to tell users what to do. You want to have a crystal clear CTA. You don't want users landing on your landing page and having to guess what to do or where to go next. In that same breath, you really want to minimize the work. So it should be really, really easy for them to fill out the form fill. If it's long or time consuming or confusing, they're going to be that much more likely to leave before fulfilling the action.
Yeah, I know I've had that experience personally, Abby, and I'll say it is quite frustrating when you are, you think you want a product or service, but then you land on that landing page and they start asking for what feels like your blood type and maybe your firstborn child. How can you help the audience? Like, how should I know what elements to include on the form fill? Like, if I'm a business owner, how should I think and how should I know what things I need versus what really isn't necessary?
Yeah, honestly, it's just that. If it's not necessary for you or your sales team to be able to effectively reach out to the client, don't include it. Don't ask for extra information. If you only need their name and their phone number, that could be enough in certain situations. So just not putting anything, extra or non-intentional in the form fill. So it's super easy and quick for them to fill out and then move on with their day.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. I know as I think about it, a lot of the clients that I work with, name, maybe phone number, email. Phone number and email both kind of have a benefit because obviously with an email, you can send email communication further, which maybe has some downstream impacts. But I think that's a great setting of the stage. And really, I think the most important thing for you to understand is a landing page is really about providing a very dedicated place for the prospect to land that has the most relevant information that you're trying to market them with. And ultimately, the completion of a form fill is a really good thing because that's a lead for your team or a lead for you. So great news. Okay, let's keep going. Kind of odd that we started at the end first, but I think that, it's important to think as we start talking through these next steps, ultimately, like where everything's going to land. So when Abby and I were putting together the content for today's webinar, we knew, and some of you in the audience may know, the amount and the amount of options available on Facebook are extensive, right? So we could probably spend a half-day session or more talking about all of the various types of ads or objectives that you can manage on Facebook. Everything from increasing page likes to reach, getting people to download an app, lead generation campaigns. We chose to focus our time today for you on conversion. So as we think, and with the tens of thousands of businesses that we work with, ultimately conversions is where it's at. How am I able to get a lead for my team to be able to drive revenue for my business? So that's what we're going to dive into today. So Abby, start us off. And I think first we are going to jump in if the slide changes. Very good, very good. Let's talk about choosing the right objective.
Yeah, so I'll point it out right now. It might sound counterintuitive with leads as our goal to not choose a lead generating ad. But for this instance, we're looking for really, really qualified leads that are going to convert to a sale. So a couple of reasons that conversion, sending them to a form fill, is going to provide more qualified leads. One is they've got more time invested. So they've already been willing to leave Facebook to go to the landing page. So they're already checkmark qualified, interested. They also have some more touch points. So you're keeping their attention. And again, that opportunity to educate as they're maybe scrolling down to the form fill. Bottom line, the more time they spend, the more interested they're going to be. And this is really helpful, for an internal sales team or a business owner to be reaching out. You don't want to be, if you want sales now, you don't want to be sifting through this 500 name list of leads that maybe aren't qualified. Then you've spent money for these and now you're spending time sifting through them. Where if you have a shorter qualified list that is ready to convert to a sale, that's going to be a better use of your time in this use case.
Yeah, and I think it absolutely speaks to why we started on kind of the landing page, because the landing page is really where you're taking them to. They're going to leave Facebook, they're going to land there, and ultimately what we're trying to get them to do is give us just a little bit of information so that we can follow up and make the sale, get them in our store, whatever it might be. Good deal. Okay, let's keep going.
Okay, so we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty from here on out. We're going to talk about setting your budget. So I always recommend campaign budget optimization. So this is an option within Ads Manager that's going to distribute your budget across the different ad sets, which we'll talk about ad sets soon, based on their performance. So basically, it's going to spend more money on the ad set that is performing the best, and that's going to result in more optimal results. So after you turn on campaign budget optimization, you've got two options. You can choose a daily budget or a lifetime budget. There are pros and cons to both. Ultimately, a daily budget is going to give you more of a controlled pacing throughout the campaign, because you're going to tell Facebook, I want to spend X amount every single day, and Facebook is going to try to spend within 20% of that every day. Lifetime, on the other hand, you're going to tell Facebook, I want to spend X amount over the entire life of my campaign. This is a really great option if you have a really specific budget allocated for a campaign, because it's going to spend down to the penny exactly what you tell it to over the life of the campaign. Daily, you do still have some control, but it will fluctuate a little bit because it is within that 20%. So ultimately, when you're deciding between which one, it's really going to depend on your timeline. You know, what does your budget look like? If your budget fluctuates a lot throughout a campaign, daily might be a better option. But yeah.
Abby, when I want to set the stage for them, because as I'm hearing you talk, I think a question that could come to people's mind is, you know, when you're setting this budget, whether it's daily or lifetime, I do think a little bit like words that come into mind is it set it and forget it? Do I set my budget on the first day of November, and let's say my campaign is meant to end through the end of year for a holiday sale? Is it really just I've got a 2-month budget and set it and forget it? Is that how they should think about it, or what is best practice?
Yeah, so technically you could set and forget either of them. That's not what any of us are going to recommend ever. I definitely recommend going in and ongoing optimization, getting in there every other day, at least once a week, seeing what's going on. And our insider tip is actually monitoring the performance of which ad variation performed the best. Because we're using that campaign budget optimization, you're going to get a lot of really great information. We'll get into this a little bit deeper moving forward on which creative, which ad set, which audience performed the best. So monitoring that ongoing is definitely my recommendation.
Yeah. I always think it's like such a hard one. I would say personally that I think there's like this balance of you can become quite obsessed and monitor what I would suggest is way too much, or rely a little too heavily on all the magic behind the scenes and maybe fall by the wayside and let it and maybe set it and forget it. So the balance is probably setting, you know, somewhere in between, not making changes that frequently, but and allowing it kind of the time to do it. I would also throw in here that, you know, we're saying setting your budget. The budget, as I mentioned earlier, really can be quite small or quite large. Like we run campaigns of all sizes, and it doesn't have to be, you know, thousands of dollars to start by any stretch of the imagination. So wonderful. Okay, let's keep going. Good stuff so far.
Okay, so we're going to get into selecting our conversion event. To do this, you're going to want to install Facebook Pixel, and there's a ton of reasons Facebook Pixel is super important outside of needing it to perform this particular ad. It allows further customization of your audiences. You can set up automatic bidding. That's going to reach people that Facebook knows is more likely to perform that desired action. It's also going to let you target more specifically and then retarget, which we'll get into retargeting a little bit further down the line, but this is basically going to allow you to capture individuals who have taken certain actions on your website and then give them a specific copy or creative or type of ad. And then ultimately at the end of your campaign, you're going to get much more detailed analytics out of Facebook Pixel than just relying on Facebook Ads Manager.
Wonderful. Okay, without getting too granular and maybe not step-by-step instruction, give the audience just the gist of what does it take to set up the pixel. You need.
Yeah, it's really easy. You really just need your business manager set up and then access to the back end of your website. I believe we have a downloadable that everyone will get to that has resources that gives you step by step. It can feel overwhelming, but it's really a super simple process. And once you set it up, it's there and good to go.
Yeah, we certainly would recommend that for really any type of Facebook advertising that you're doing. You're right. It's going to give you the most visibility into what's happening, and visibility in this and access to that data is really what you're looking for. Okay. All right, let's start to jump into the fun stuff now.
Okay, so now we're building out our audience. So I recommend using multiple ad sets to start to narrow your audiences down, at least two. For this example, we're going to look at our roofing contractor throughout the remainder of the presentation, and we have two ad sets set up for them. So you want to set up different ad sets so you can tailor your messaging specifically to them. So in our example, ad set one is retirees. So we've identified some key counties within our service area in Ohio. You can get really granular with locations too, all the way down to a zip code, or as broad, if you have a national campaign, that's an option too, and everything in between. We've narrowed our age because we are targeting retirees to 60 to 65 plus. We've identified some household income up on the upper percentage just to match the price point of our service in this instance and kind of, pre-qualify who we're serving our ad to. And then our interest is retirement. On the flip side, we have ad set two. We're targeting younger families here. So same service age. Our age is 28 to 40 here. And then we've added some family statuses like new parents, parents of toddlers, parents of school-age children. So obviously the creative, which we'll look at on the next slide for these two ad sets, it's not, one ad is not going to speak well to both. So we want to have a really tailored approach. Also, going back to campaign budget optimization, this is really minimizing the risk of testing out new audiences because we have that turned on. Facebook's going to spend the money to the ad set that's responding the best. So in this scenario, if the retirees are really responding well, they're going to the landing page, they're filling out the form, we're going to spend more of our budget on that ad set.
That is a great advantage. So something that nobody has to be scared of because the budget will be spent where it's being best utilized, which I think is really great. I know I've personally worked with a lot of clients, and this is always an interesting conversation, right? Where it's maybe a doctor's office or a restaurant or any type of vertical. It says, I really don't care who my customers. It can be 18 to 70 or from any place as long as they're willing to spend money. But this is where I think that conversation really starts about thinking about who is going to be a profitable customer for you, who is going to drive maybe incremental revenue to your business, or somebody that's not shopping at your business currently. So I think this is a great opportunity to sit down and really think about your preferred client and preferred customer and maybe profitable customer as well. So okay, so obviously I get the gist of where we're going, because I can imagine now that I've kind of identified and I want to market, I can market to these folks in creative ways that's very meaningful to them, because marketing to a 60 to 65-year-old very different than a 28 to 40-year-old. So let's roll into content and how that changes by audience as well.
Okay, this is really the fun part of creating ads. First, recommend customizing everything. Don't use one image size. There's different aspect ratios depending on the placement of an ad. So you want to make sure you're optimized no matter where it's going. You also want to use the right terminology and language for your particular ad sets. You can see our examples, ad set one and ad set two. We have the same goal and we're offering them the same offer, but we're speaking directly to each group here. And it's really showing them that we get them, that we understand, because you have to remember, we're kind of interrupting their day when we, market to people on social media. They didn't open their Facebook app looking for a roofer today. So to get them to stop scrolling and really say, hey, this is interesting, you want it to be really captivating, really, really tailored, and, copy that really speaks to each specific demographic.
Yeah. And I think just relevant, right? Like as a user of Facebook, I want to make sure that like when, because I we all get hit by ads, and we've all seen examples of really bad ones that kind of turn us off and we're like, don't waste my time, and others that create real genuine interest in a product or in a business. I know recently in my feed, it's fall here, right? So we've got beautiful fall colors. I've been getting targeted by some landscapers for like fall cleanup, and I tell you, that imagery of the nice fall colors is amazing to see. And so that sort of thing I like. Something that doesn't, maybe I don't feel is as pertinent to me, not so much fun. So yeah, I think those are all great examples. And I see, I'm looking over on my other screen because we are getting a ton of questions, which is really exciting. So a reminder, if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We've got a little bit more information to go through, and then Abby and I are going to start attacking your questions because you guys are asking great, great ones. Okay, so you've set the budget, you've selected your audience, you've chosen the right media and content to serve them. Let's talk about monitoring and tracking of success. So I already mentioned in my mind the tracking of all of this is really, the other stuff might be fun, but this is where the rubber really meets the road, and this is really important. So we recommend 2 data point conversion tracking in regards to form fill and conversion ads when we're talking about that. So how do you really know if an ad campaign is successful? Well, there's 2 parts or 2 places that you can measure that conversion. First is, how many form fills did you get, right? That clearly tells you, were your ads compelling? Did the landing page have the right information? Did you have a form fill that was easy to use and easy to give the information? So we like to look at that, percentage of form fills versus people that saw the ad. And then the second place to track is actually completing a sale, right? So of the form fills that you received, are you invoicing them? Did they buy a product or service for you? Did they end up booking the job, right? And so this is really helpful because it not only tells you, is your advertising effective? Are the things that you're doing, does that make sense? But it also tells you if you have some gaps maybe within your sales team, if you're not completing the sale or converting as a high level as you'd like to. Or does your time from filling out the form fill until the point that you get back to the client take too long? And maybe somebody else has got to them in the meantime. So there's a lot of elements that you can find out about your process that we think are incredibly useful. And obviously our tip here, we bring up the pixel again. Make sure to use the pixel so that you can retarget anyone who's visited your landing page but didn't fill out the form. And I love that one, Abby, because if they may have gone there, they may have been like multitasking or doing something else, and maybe they just need like that quick reminder. So talk a little bit about what that retargeting aspect means.
Yeah, so I would create an ad set just like we had retirees and new parents. I would have visited the website or our landing page in this case as an ad set and create some copy with maybe a little bit stronger CTA. I think everyone can relate to kind of feeling like you have an ad following you around, like maybe you had some shoes in your shopping cart you didn't check out and then they're like stalking you. That's where retargeting comes in, and it's really effective. I mean, I have fallen for the that's how I buy everything.
Yeah.
So you really want that strong CTA, and think about it the same way as a demographic. Cater the copy to them, knowing that they've been to your website, they know who you are, they've done their research. So, I mean, if you're willing to even offer up a little bit additional on your sale or offer, that's a great ad set to target with that. But yeah, that is a really great tool to use to kind of capture everybody and funnel them down.
Yeah, I agree. I am totally guilty of it as well. And I have to say, I might be the minority, and I know I'm kind of in the industry, so I know it. But I actually appreciate it because, like I think you used the word reminder. It is a good reminder. Like, oh yeah, I didn't book the appointment at the salon that I was going to, or I was going to make my pet a grooming appointment and I forgot to, or the shoes example is a very relevant one for myself also. So totally,
Yeah,
totally get it.
it's going back to kind of interrupting them. Like, how many times have you gotten all the way to checkout and then you didn't have your wallet next to you and you're like, oh, I'll do it later. It's just nudging them back over the edge. So you're staying top of mind.
Yeah, yeah, I think that is great. And I think that, this monitoring and tracking allows you then to tweak all of the things that we just got done talking through around ad copy, around your audience, what's working, what's not. I see a lot of the questions coming in are good, very specific questions about some of the topics that we've kind of started on. So we're going to be able to dive in more, which we're really excited about. Okay, so we have shared a ton today. And Abby and I are both really passionate about this topic. And I would say Abby probably thinks this topic is way more simpler than I, because she lives it every day and breathes it and is much more knowledgeable on the topic than I am. But even I am as well. But it can be really complex. And if we're being honest, Facebook ads are complex. We certainly recommend partnering with a third party. There's a ton of advantages. We actually get a ton of joy working with the tens of thousands of businesses that we do and kind of helping them through this. You can see there's lots of decision points to think through. And I always think that sometimes getting that third party perspective, which is different than those that are internal to your business, is really helpful. So we'd recommend taking advantage of that, certainly. Okay, so we are through the content that we've prepared, but the great news is, as I mentioned, we have a lot of great questions. So Abby, we've got questions rolling in. Let's start. This is a great one. So when you set a budget, so we have a couple budget questions, and I might get into those specifically. When you set a budget, is it for all of your ads or just one particular ad? Because kind of talk to them about the layers of the setup.
Sure. So kind of think about it like a pyramid. So your campaign is the umbrella. If the campaign was this 10% off a particular kind of shingle, that's what we want to push out. Everything else falls under that. So you have your multiple ad sets, and you can have multiple ads under each ad set. You're setting the budget, because we're using campaign budget optimization, up at the campaign level. For this whole entire network of ads and ad sets I've created, I want to spend X amount of dollars. Facebook then divvies that up between the ad sets and the particular ads under each ad set in a way that is optimal, and whichever ad set and ad is performing. So for example, maybe we know our retiree ad set is performing the best, but we had a couple different versions of the creative. We had the static image that we showed you, maybe we had a video, and maybe a carousel ad. If they're responding to the video the best, Facebook's going to spend more of the budget to that video. So again, you're learning a lot about your demographics through this, because not only do we know retirees are performing better, they perform better to video ads. So then we know that when we're moving forward later.
Yeah, I think that's a great benefit too. And we just touched on it, but I think that setup and doing it in that structure is actually way more helpful for you, the business owner, because then you don't have to worry about saying, I want to put $20 on this ad and $30 on that ad, because that would require way too much knowledge on your part to know, like, the audience that's available to actually see the ad, to click on the ad, to actually take action. So I think that actually ends up being very helpful for the business owner.
Yeah.
We have other questions about some specifics on setting up the budget, and that budget setup will be part of the downloadable that we send you out. That'll have great links and kind of give directions how. So we'll get into some of that. You'll get all of that detailed information after the webinar. Let's talk a little bit about performance, Abby. So we have a question about, I think you and I have both used the words ads that perform the best. And that can be, what is the definition of the best? So when you think about thinking about criteria of performance, how would you recommend our audience thinks about how to evaluate top performing ads, top audiences, campaigns? Like, what's the lens that they should look through when they're evaluating best performing?
Yeah, it has a complicated answer. So the first area you want to look at, if we're just comparing success within our campaign, you want to identify whatever KPI it is. So if we're continuing on with our example, it's form fills. That's how we're measuring success. There are some other data points, maybe clicks, maybe that audience we talked about, they went to the landing page, but they didn't quite fill it out. So it's pretty obvious whichever ad got the most form fills performed the best in this instance. But if you want to dig in a little bit deeper, and kind of what you spoke to, like maybe if they're not converting from the form fill to a sale, there's some parts you can examine. Same thing here. If you're getting them over to the landing page, tons and tons into the landing page, you know that your ad and your call to action on your ad is working, because you're getting them to navigate off of Facebook, which is step number one. Something maybe is happening if you're seeing a ton of landing page views and not a lot of form fills. Maybe your landing page isn't loading, maybe it's not mobile friendly, maybe your form fill is too long, like we talked about earlier, and you are, seeing people bounce because it's too complicated or it's not clear where to navigate. So that's another way to measure success. So maybe we have one ad that got a ton of form fills. We know that one was great. Maybe we have another ad set that got a huge amount of reach and a huge amount of clicks, but we didn't see a lot of form fills. That's when you can kind of examine where they are in that journey and where you want to adjust from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's always hard. The great thing about doing webinars like this is that you and I are able to get a lot of learning out for a lot of different types of businesses. The hard thing is that when we speak about like success, it does vary so much by the type of industry that you're in, the objectives that you have, what it is that you're trying to achieve. Kind of tying back to like why we recommend like at least chatting with a third party, because that perspective that they'll be able to provide, very unique perspective, obviously, to you. Okay, another question on budget. So Abby, this one probably goes back to the slide where you were talking about daily budgets. Isn't it better to use daily budgets? Because when you set a budget, Facebook can waste money towards the end of the scheduled date to just spend all of the money, right? So I guess the question is like, is that one of the cons maybe?
Yeah, so, but on the flip side, there's a really similar con on daily budget. So same exact thing. If you tell it it needs to spend X amount and you get a ton of form fills for a really, really low CPA, it's still going to try to spend that money regardless. So it kind of is still the same con, just on a micro level, where with the lifetime budget, you could maybe get away, like on that day when you got a ton of form fills for a really low cost, it'll stop spending. It did its job and then move on. And then you have more money to spend later on down the line. So it does have its pros and cons on both sides. But as far as kind of like wasting budget, that definitely could happen with a daily budget too.
Yeah, which is why it probably ties back into the don't just set it and forget it. Be mindful of be mindful of what's going on. Do be paying a little bit of attention, maybe not like every minute or even every day, but do pay attention. Really good one, and somebody caught us for this. I see you use static images for your ad examples. Is that the best media type to use for conversion campaigns?
So not necessarily. There's a ton of options. Like I was talking about earlier, video ads, carousel ads, those are all really, really great options. And that's the bet. I think campaign budget optimization has been in every single one of my answers, but it's just such a good tool to experiment and to learn about your audience, really, really risk-free. So I would try both of them. That's my recommendation. Every single new ad set, put a static image option, put a video option at the very minimum, and see which is performing better.
Yeah, great. Okay. This one's really specific, but I know you'll have the answer for us, Abby. Is there any benefit to putting all of my conversion campaigns under one Facebook campaign versus separate ones if they target the same audience?
Yes. I'm not sure when you would have identical conversion ads over and over and over again. So I would recommend tweaking in between them, but still keeping it all under. Think about your campaign as like, why did you, going back to the who, what, when, where, why are we running this campaign? Why are we on Facebook ads? So if they all fall under that umbrella of the same goal to, sell this rebate on shingles or push this offer, I would keep them all under the campaign. Just so you can see that A/B testing. When you spread them out, you also might end up bidding against yourself too. So I would recommend, if it is the same objective, always keeping it under the same campaign.
I agree, because I think also you get that benefit of like learning, so to speak. I don't know if that's the right, but like the ads learning from each other about what's working, what's not, versus if they're in separate campaigns, you won't get that, right? Yeah. A great question, and Abby, you're most versed to speak to this also, and thank you for asking the question. I should have said it. Do you have people who are experts in specific industries? I've had challenges with third-party companies who don't understand our business and struggle to find the best post or type of content for our business.
Yeah, 100%. We have an incredible team. They are just awesome, and they all come from so many different backgrounds. So we do have someone that fits just about every single thing. It's really incredible.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, to give folks a taste out there, we have a social media management team that works with all types of industries, everything from all of the industry examples that we've mentioned so far, as well as obscure industries, B2B industries, banks, you name it. There probably is not an industry that we haven't worked with. And I know, Abby, you and the team take a lot of time to kind of think through when a new account comes in, who's the right fit for it, so that you do get that. Because whoever asked the question out there, you're right. That is a secret to it. You can't just have kind of a generic, it is about having the right content for your industry. Okay. There's so many good questions coming in. I want to go back up to where we started, which was landing pages. The question is, can I send them to a page on my website that has a form on it, or does it have to be a dedicated landing page? What's the difference and which is better?
So you can send them to a form fill on your page, absolutely. I would recommend a dedicated landing page though. Dedicated in the sense that it's aligned with your ad. There's nothing more frustrating than I get served an ad, I click it, I leave Facebook, and the page it took me to has nothing to do with the product or service. So we definitely don't want to do that. Another great benefit of dedicated landing pages is they don't typically have the same navigation like our websites would. So it's just minimizing distractions and really not giving them an opportunity to kind of lose track and go all over the place. So always dedicated is my recommendation.
Yeah, and I think ideally, and I'm going to piggyback on that by kind of answering another question that came in that has to do with this also. So the question is should the landing page be the contact page, thinking kind of same thing, form fill, or dedicated toward the service offered? And I think the best case scenario that we would recommend, if you have the resources and you can, that like if you're a company that has I don't know, like a HVAC, plumbing, heating kind of comes to mind, where you've got very distinct, you want them to land on information that pertains to that ad. So if it's a 10% off coupon for winterizing your furnace, you want them to land on a heating furnace page and winterization. If it's about air conditioning, you want them to land on air conditioning. If it's about, you get the gist of where I'm going. So when possible, you want that content to marry up pretty darn close, right, Abby?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. I have time for a couple more questions, I think. This is, again, talking a little bit about the data. How do you define success in terms of cost per result or total number of conversions?
Yeah, so that's really going to depend a lot. We kind of already touched on this on industry, doing a lot of research, working with a third party that's really familiar with those industry benchmarks, because obviously, you know, a brand new roof is going to have a different KPI for what we want a conversion cost to look like versus, you know, maybe something that's more e-com or an impulse buy. They're going to look a lot different. So really doing a lot of research and trying to identify those before you even start up. When you're kind of planning the who, what, where, when, why portion, figure out what cost is this going to be worth it for me? Where am I going to feel internally that I see that ROI, and kind of set your own goals after doing industry research, looking at benchmarks for similar industries and companies.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna, I think, finish up on two more that have to do with audience. Unless we get any more questions, feel free to add if you'd like. And I should mention, if we do not get to your question, we will follow up directly one-on-one with you to make sure that your information or that your question is ultimately answered. We obviously would love to make sure that you got everything that you needed out of this. So one is, both of these are audience related, so I'll start with the first. So when creating a campaign, can you reach, like, as the examples that are given is like only Spanish people or Latin people? Is that possible? Like, talk about the audience demographic information that is available.
Yeah, so there's a ton of interest-based demographic options on there. Definitely language, 100%. There are some limitations around some demographics around, you know, race or some detailed targeting on income, but generally you could, in 100% Spanish speaking, you could target that.
Absolutely.
And, you know, maybe it's not right there for you, but kind of think, where do those people live? Are there zip codes? You know, if the option's not there, like point blank in front of you, working through your marketing demographics and kind of identifying that audience and building out this persona, which I think the downloadable has some kind of keys on that too. That can really help you use whatever interest and geographic targeting is available to key in on your audience.
Yeah, wonderful. And the last one, I think, which is also about audiences, how many audiences should I have for each campaign, and how detailed or narrow should I get with each audience?
Yeah, so that really depends on your budget and the length of the campaign. I would always recommend two. Again, utilizing campaign budget optimization, there's got to be a way to split it up so you can have that kind of A/B testing. But you don't want to do so many with a small budget that you're going to run your budget thin. 2 to 3, if I was forced to answer a number, would probably be where I would start, and you can kind of branch off from there. And then you just want it to be detailed enough that the ad is speaking directly to them. So you might, once you get into the creative, figure out like, actually, this ad does speak to both of these ad sets, and I could combine them into one. Or really, this doesn't make sense for a portion of my ad set. Maybe I need to scale down on the age range. So you'll kind of figure it out as you're building that out. And again, any exercises you can do on identifying a marketing persona is really going to help you nail those out.
Wonderful. Okay, I've said that was the last question. There's one more, only because, shameless plug. Somebody's asking, what exactly is your service that you provide? Which we definitely try not to plug ourselves too much, because our goal in these webinars is to make sure to give you the information. But for those of you that don't know, Vivial is a marketing agency that offers a wide variety of digital marketing services, everything from social media management that we're talking about today, but including Google ads and directory optimization, SEO services, you name it, we do it. We work with all sizes of budgets, all types of companies. If you have questions specific to us, you can feel free to email us at webinars@vivialmarketing.net. You can also join our text messaging list by texting JOIN to 77842. It'll allow you to stay up to date on the most recent marketing trends. 45 minutes goes fast. I think we got to darn near every question, but I know we didn't have time for everyone. So as I mentioned, if we didn't get to your specific questions, we will follow up directly. On behalf of Abby and I just want to thank all of you for coming. Thank you for joining us today and learning all about social media. We were thrilled to have you, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody.